I am Nita Little, and this is Breaking Bread, a wishful monthly talk and conversation with other dancers and people who think about the relationship of dance in the world, as a world. Sometimes the conversation is about the practice of moving together, and sometimes the conversation is about how dance interfaces and what we think because of what we know as dancers. And when I say dancers, it's kind of a very broad thing to say. I actually don't mean all dancers, because some dance forms are very constrained and very particular, and yet the engagement of physicality and the physical form as a practice of the mind is important to me and is important to what we do. As many of you know who have worked with me, I do not distinguish mind from body, except as language requires that I make that distinction. Because where there is body, there is mind. Where there is mind, there is body. And that may seem kind of bizarre to you when I say where there is mind, there is body. And what I mean by that is that if you think of the number 3 or the number of many, it doesn't matter, you will have a bodily felt reference to that. And that reference will be either in your own physical form or in your environmental form. And now I'm muddying that water too, and kind of starting to eliminate the distinction between you and your place of being, so that our understanding of beingness is far more complex. So when we dance and all we are moving is the boundary of our skin sac and and its contents, then we are missing a humongous part of the story of what's going on. And that to me is one of the things that's so exciting about contact improvisation as a dance form. What excites me about contact improvisation is that it is a study of the relationship between two bodies in motion initially, and then it becomes much more complex. Very early on in the development of contact, it became very clear to me that that what I was attending to, where my mind was influenced what would happen as a physical form. And from there on, everything got messy in terms of my understanding of body-mind. So today's talk is looking at this seemingly dualistic distinction between wildness and control. And many of you may know that I from time to time taught workshops on rewilding, meaning, and when I've taught, and rewilding attention, rewilding it is a big one. Rewilding relationships, rewilding as a way of, I used to think about things becoming feral because we can't actually return to wildness in the social sense, because once you have been domesticated, which we all are, and I think of us as domesticated beings, once we have been domesticated, we will never leave that. That will never not be a part of our being. What we can do is become more, become a larger form. So, and in becoming a larger form, we become we offer more possibilities. Thinking about this subject of about that dualism, which hopefully we will trouble. We will make it very messy if we can altogether. One of the precepts, I would say, of contact improvisation is this reach for controlled abandon. Meaning, how do we be way engaged in our relationship with the earth through falling, and through with physics, through momentum? How do we engage in those things that are happening external to our own choices, perhaps, and control it? So if you have a situation in which, and I'm thinking of Steve Paxton's initial engagement with reflexive action when he did magnesium. When Steve did magnesium, he had men run and smash into each other and hit the floor however they would. And in that engagement, hitting the floor, they weren't trained how to hit the floor. They were having to determine for themselves, within the instance of falling, how to meet the floor. And that reflexive action showed up, that the body knew what was happening. I mean, it would show up to keep faces from landing on hard surfaces, to find ways to roll, to come up with modes of moving together with another body within an instant. And that reflexive action was a kind of bodily level, the depth of the body's knowing. And I would now call that peripheral intelligence. The peripheral intelligence of the body showed up to move in relations to a world that it also is. Control in the that figure, controlled abandon, is what we do when we have an experience and shape it. So we're in the wildness of the abandon of a fall, and we start to organize that fall. So a very clear moment of that was, I was on a fast walk a couple of years ago and stepped off a curb, and my ankle gave. And all of a sudden, I was in an unexpected fall right towards the road, right onto the surface of the road at a crosswalk. And as I'm falling, my hands go out reflexively like this. And as that happens, I start to feel the forward force of my action, which is not a friendly feeling on hands, when it's the macadam and the surface of a road. It's kind of harsh. And I thought, I'm going to, there's this knowing of scraping myself. And a thought came in my mind very fast, but it had these words, as if it were these words: tuck your head, stupid. Or actually, it was just tuck your head, which is what I did. And of course, I tucked my head with that forward momentum and did a forward roll in the middle of the road and came up and walked away unscathed. Maybe there was a tiny little cut on my hand from the initial meeting of the road, but I was kind of in perfect shape. That was controlled abandon. That knowing what's happening enough to have choice in how it comes about. So we're constantly looking within the dance of contact improvisation for that incredible interplay of these opposing forces, so to speak. The force of abandon, controlled abandon, and the force of and the potential to recognize what's happening and guide oneself through it. When I think about wildness and abandon, I think of them as living in similar kind of territory. I think of wildness as that which is making choice beyond my domestic control, beyond my domestication. Because my domestication is going to choose control. But when I am within the state of the wilderness, when I enter wilderness, then I am entering the possibility of not knowing. And control is always dependent upon knowing. But where there is not knowing, now things arise for other reasons than reasons of control. And I may not know what those reasons are. They may be other controls that I have not as an individual and as a cultured being and met. And in the dance, that is also true. The practice, one of the greatest practices of contact improvisation is to continue to unknow almost everything you encounter within the dance. So that the requirement is that you recognize, you re-meet, you come to know something anew. You come to know felt sensing anew. You meet what you open up the spaces within your being, not to define something, but to meet again, to come to and become available, in other words, to experience, to know, to what knowing might be, so that knowing does not become capturing. Knowing becomes a step on a path, but not an end point. Knowing, it's interesting about knowing doesn't disappear. There's two books I want to bring into this conversation. Not books, two people. One is James Bridle, who has written a book that I highly recommend called Ways of Being. And the other is the work of Michael Levin, who is a evolutionary biologist working with working across scales of being. And the reason why I want to bring these people forward is because of the kind of work, the ways they're thinking about the world. And one of the ways that they're thinking is, and I'm coming down a little lower. One of the ways they're thinking is as James Bridle, I mean, not James, as Michael Levin would say, all intelligence is collective intelligence. And if all intelligence is collective, that means that when your arm moves there, as Nicholas is moving, that's many. That is the world of many moving. So peripheral intelligence, or that which shows up when we dance, is the dance of the many, not the one. When we are thinking of the possible structures for making choices, one of the practices that contact brings us to is co-creative. How is it we make choices together? How is it that because of two and more, we are more intelligent than when we are merely one? So that takes us into the wilderness. Now we have to become this larger being that includes other beings as ourselves, not as separate beings. So the notion of individualizing is, when I think rewilding, I think about the practice of becoming a larger being and becoming available to a world I do not necessarily know. I don't know the choices that are being made. I can be influenced by this world, greatly influenced. And I can also influence that world, and I can recognize my own influence. And recognizing one's influence, the presence of your presence, is critical to co-creative practices. It's one that we put a great deal of emphasis on listening, but in fact, one has to know that one is speaking so that there is communication as well. Both are necessary. And one has to know that what one says, for instance, if I'm in conversation, is heard. I don't get to know how it's heard, how it's understood. I get to know that it's heard. I get to know that it's received. I might get to know aspects of how it's received. But my meeting the world is always going to be an entering of the wilderness, if I can recognize the wilderness. And I must recognize the wilderness that I also am. And in recognizing the wilderness that I also am, I get to have choice. That's the conversation. I get to play. And play is about choice. Play is about experimental choice. for me, dance improvisation is a phenomenal act of play. So this recognizing the you that you are, that is always also in the wilderness, an aspect of wilderness, is to know that you are this larger being, both on every scale of being. If we go inside into the multiplicity that you also are, right? Because you are made up of many, many highly intelligent cell bodies. And the work of Michael Levin is so remarkable because he is recognizing the brilliance of a single cell being that has memory, that makes choices, that shows up, and is what is composing all of us. We are made up of single cell beings, and they are making choices for us constantly. And there's this extraordinary intercellular glue of the conversation that's being had. And on the level of our own being, there's a conversation on the human scale of in which we identify single beings as different beings. On that scale, we are constantly in conversation. So recognizing this conversation ourselves with what we do not know, with that which is unknowable even, or coming into knowing, that as an aspect of our own being that exists in all moments, that is a big job. And when we do contact, when we dance together, celebrating, working and moving in celebration, not just of what you can do and what you can know and what you can control, but in that which you cannot control, that which you recognize as the being you also are, that you are not, and that you are able to embrace. And it's environmental. It's the other guy that you're dancing with, or guys, beings, the other persons that you are engaged with. It is the substance of the world itself, which is unknowable. And where we think we know, we have to unknow. We have to take it apart. So that's the work of James Bridle, which I want to bring forward, which is that in his text, Ways of Being, it's a relatively new text, came out 2023 or 2022. He is interested in the beingness of everything. The beingness of a car, the beingness of a single cell being, the beingness of a tree, the beingness of all of a forest, so changing scale, the beingness up and down the scale, and the beingness on the level of an object or a technology that is functioning as an action. And in recognizing beingness, recognizing intelligence. So let's take that word consciousness and turn it into intelligence right now. And understand that intelligence is happening everywhere, and we're not recognizing it. And intelligence right now is the wilderness. So if we are dancing in an intelligent universe, while living in a form that is unstable, why is the form of a human unstable? Because it's a body-mind. Because the mind is always in motion, and because the mind that identifies the world, and the mind is constantly doing that job of identifying, changing scale when it identifies, and constantly creating distinctions. But when you stop that job and when you open that job up to say, okay, creating and recognizing difference is important, but what happens when the I that I understand is Nita embraces all of that difference, even that which I can't possibly know? Then now Nita is even more unstable. And living that instability of my own wildness, the wilderness of intelligent being that I am living on many, many scales, both within my flesh and beyond my flesh. Now, what can I know? And when I know it, not grasp it and freeze it and fix it, but allow it to be informing, changing me, informing me, even as it is becoming something I no longer can understand. Am I sounding, are you guys getting what I'm talking about here? Okay, great. And this goes very practically into a contact improv dance. Imagine you're in performance, right? You've decided that you're going to show something with some other dance partner, a contact improv. How many of you do perform contact improv? Do you ever do it in front of people? Yeah, okay. So when you dance and you're doing things with someone, maybe they are known moves, known pathways, maybe they are surprises that you identified. That attention to identifying oneself as different from your partner, that is an action of kind of turning the wilderness into known, to what can be known, right? The control part. Let's grasp this. Let's get what's here. Let's create these distinctions, these boundaries. And when you free your self-identity so that you become the dance itself, you become available to dancing, some of those distinctions totally disappear. And you may start to move on the scale, a scale of time in which objects of action can't possibly show up. Why? Because you are so engaged in the immediate moment now and the wilderness of that now. In that moment, the dance starts to dance you. And we no longer have two dancers dancing unless we're outside and being the one that's making the distinctions. But the dancers themselves, if you look at them, the dancers dissolve into the dance. And there are no objects. There is this continuum of being, which is extraordinary. And there is this instability of being, which is exciting. And of course, that's not absolute, because always we're going to move between both. We're going to show up as a dancer and then dissolve into the dance. And then an action will happen and we'll show up as a dancer and dissolve into the dance. And now I'm talking about performance and wilderness, and how important it is to let yourself disappear into the wilderness when you perform, which means that you allow yourself to enter to recognize that which you can't know and become subject to it. So I very often like to talk about the difference between walking through a forest and walking as a forest. When you walk as a forest, you now have become this larger form that you can't possibly know, but that you are subject to, that you are being changed by. You are becoming the wildness that you also are. And it's so exciting to be unstable. It's so exciting to be able to dance and move together and not be seeking those things we can recognize. This moment, now we're going to do this, but allow ourselves to become subject to this larger form. Now, of course, that takes skills, doesn't it? It takes skills of listening to the very smallest of you, the very smallest, and give voice to the peripheral, allowing the peripheral, the small, the furthest away, to speak and change the course of what might be happening, to stop this demand for top-down cognitive action, and allow the fact that intelligence is everywhere and you can be moved by it. It is your intelligence, even if you don't know what it is. So that your partner's brilliance can become yours. So that your partner moves you. So that the floor moves you. So that the macadam of the street becomes you and speaks. So can we recognize the voice of the world? Can we recognize the voices of the being, the intelligent being of the world? Can we? And how would we know? So that knowing itself gets to be this extraordinary instability that informs and increases our tactility, our touch in the world. And there's an interesting thing about touch, right? When you touch something, do you notice that you touch it and then you start to move around? Your fingers want to move around the surface. They don't just touch and stay there. To know it, you have to move. Yeah. And as you're moving around, so you touch someone, you go like this. And if you go ahead and touch your own face. So here you are touching your own face. And if you might notice that you can feel you're seeking motion, aren't you? Your fingers are seeking motion. And if you're not, you're moving. Maybe you're moving. You are the motion of touch. The desire to know is extraordinary and beautiful, and we want that. We want that desire to know. At the same time, that we want to also recognize unknowing or not knowing. Where is the wilderness right in this place, right here? And that touching is always because it's the part of you that understands there's a wilderness right there. That motion is the part of you that understands the wilderness is at hand. So my only statement would be, let's celebrate it. Okay, I'm going to open this up, and if everyone can take their audio and mute off and open up, let's talk. Let's have a conversation about what we're talking about. I have to say, I was recently teaching a workshop in composing emergence, and I found myself saying to everyone, kill the dancer. If you're performing, kill the dancer. Why kill the dancer? Because if you're performing and I'm seeing the dancer do things, I'm not seeing the dance. The dancer has to dissolve into the performance. That's what I want to see. I want to see the dance. And that's a difficult thing to do. But I'm basically saying that about our contact improv. And I'm also saying that about our living. If the you of you is too loud, if what is important to you is that you show up as you, which is a cultural, the culture wants, we live in a culture of personality. And that destroys the wilderness. That destroys the relationships. Then what is the dance? The dance is the dance of relations. What is the dance? The dance is the motion of the desire to know, the desire to engage in relations, the desire to extend into this wilderness and to know that which is right there present with you. Always. Okay, anybody? Ideas, thoughts, words, questions, comments? What are you thinking? I think this must be similar to if you meet the Buddha along the road, kill him. That quote, right?
For me, when I'm dancing and there are no thoughts in my head, that's when it's really good. That's what I hope for. And it doesn't always happen. But it's that observingness that it's somehow wanting to know what I'm doing with my head, but I don't need to, because my body is doing it. And as you said, the mind is part of the body, so it can just be quiet, enjoy.
I think when the mind is consumed with the present experience, then it is engaged in this extraordinary capacity. It is the duration of before what's coming or what's been, thinking ahead, thinking behind, that becomes problematic. That present awareness is when that is unleashed, it's extraordinary. So we don't want to not have the mind work. We want it all to turn into mind. We want it to be bigger. We just want it to be right now, so that it can experience the dimensions of the being. It can play with those dimensions.
I think my problem is that when I think mind, I think words.
Exactly. That is a problem. Yeah. And words, if you're thinking in sentences, that's duration. Yeah, it takes time to have words come out.
Nita, it's Song here. I'll see if I can give this any words. I am so enjoying being in the wilderness of your thinking, and it feels so resonant with some explorations. I've been doing something I'm calling embodied ecology in the wilds. And I guess where I get a little hooked and wait, what is the kill the dancer expression. I totally get it, and I get the sort of like reorientation of it. But there is something in the treacherousness of like the treachery of like giving it anything, calling it problematic, even because it happens. It's a real thing, and it is a part of the intelligence that we would come into form as a stable knowingness. It is the structure, it is the edifice, it is the demolition of the meadow up above my house. And so how can I be with that in a way that isn't so violent, but that in fact embraces it as a way of our being in the world? It's a part of the wilderness.
Yeah. You know, when I say kill the dancer, I'm being dramatic.
Oh, absolutely. And yet, because what my mind does is the me of me is too loud. The me of me is too loud, and it's a loop, right? It becomes sort of like how is the exit available?
So I think I did say, but I didn't say it very powerfully, that it is imperfect, that you will never perfectly do the dance. It is imperfect to have the dancer not show up. The dancer will show up, and then if you're engaged in a practice of kill the dancer, you know, you'll go, hi, you know, here it is. It's me. Here I am doing this thing. And then you understand that I is unstable. And it is when we try to fix the I and make it stable that we lose the dance. That when we think we know who that I is, when we're dealing with the recognizable me, and not realizing that really doesn't exist. And yet we have to imagine that it exists in order to accomplish anything in our days. Right? So we're constantly riding this tightrope between as the rope swings. Between
it's a good example because it's the rope swinging. So how do you just not just swing with it, but add a true response of your whole while this rope is swinging?
Yeah, so you have to become the rope that's swinging. Maybe in order to do what you're asking to do, correct? So changing who, you know, you limit yourself to being just the body on the rope, and you've got a problem. Because your touch is no longer passing through the length of the rope. Your sensory organ is no longer of touch, is no longer able to feel the wind move that rope, is no longer able to feel, to understand how the shift of your head as you look right has changed everything, including the rope, including the ends of the rope. That, you know, this is the only possibility is for you to become a larger form and to engage in being this capacity to be moved and to move, to recognize your presence and how your presence changes the world, and letting the world change your presence in this constant motion of being. That you are constantly seeking to establish the self as knowable. You will constantly try to know that dance you're dancing. You will constantly try to know what to do next. And you also have to let that go. You have to understand and become this larger form that includes what you don't know, what you don't yet know. Nicholas, did I touch anything like what you were talking to? I was a little unsure what you were talking to, what you were speaking to.
Yes, and parallel processing happening.
Okay. Okay.
And is my screen flickering on your side or just on my side?
I think it's just on your side.
Good, because I wouldn't want that distraction happening for you.
Thank you. That's very kind. Yeah, no, it's great having you here. I love where you are. Okay. Anybody else? Comments?
Something I'm thinking about is how I love when I become the dance, and I love watching people who are the dance dancing. And I'm holding in my body at the same time some limits, like say I have an injury, like that's there with me, or like some part of me that might have a trauma response, or like some sort of movement that might be triggering, holding that. And I'm wondering how you talk about or conceptualize the desire to be more than you are, but also when it feels important to let yourself be there, to be there.
So I have to change your words because you said the desire to be more than I am. I don't think of it that way.
Mm.
When I become my larger self, that is inclusive of that which I don't yet know. And I'm easily moved. I am larger, but it's not it is me. It is not me becoming more than me.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the notion that you think it's more than me separates you from all that you're doing in that moment.
Mm.
It separates you from the dance or from anything you're engaged relationally with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a piece of that question, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, I can't see it there, but that feels really important. because of the element of, like, there is a limitation to what our form and physicality can do, and that whether that is experienced as a control dictated from mind or something to be known and experienced through sensation, not just by ourselves but by the peripheral intelligence, I think that's where, like, an element of protection, like how it is that we stay safe and knowable to others in a way that keeps us in a sustainable relationship. Does that make sense?
I think
That we're
that's
not hurting. Yeah.
yeah, I agree completely, Song. I mean, I think as cultural beings, we have to be recognizable. We have to understand how we are influencing anything, anyone, in a sense that we show up in a way that meets the relationship we're engaged in. And at the same time, we're dancers. And I want to say really distinctly, being a dancer is a freedom that I give myself to not be the same as everyone else. I do not demand that I show up the same. I demand that I have the skills to show up the same. I mean, I very easily tell people I do not dress like an artist because I am, or a radical because I am so radical. I don't want to be easily recognized. I'm not putting out into the world, I'm a radical. No, because then I start to limit my capacities. So I show up in many cases as recognizable where it's necessary. And I give myself the freedom to dance. And that dance is a body-mind dance. It is that dance of instability. Now, do I know what the ground is, where the ground is? And I think the thing that I hear you saying, Song, is there has to be a ground. There has to be an earth. And for me, as a dancer, my practice is to come out. My practice is one of being in the deepest release I can. When, for instance, if I go up on stage, I go into a state of release. I don't kick up, I kick down. And when I kick down, I become a multiplicity of being on the scale of the very small within my felt form. And because I'm many, I have a tremendous amount access to intelligence. I have incredible access to intelligence. Yeah. So I start from many and move into one rather than into singulars, from a multiplicity into singulars, rather than start as a single and move into multiplicities when I'm dancing.
So you talked about going into kicking down, release. How I've generally gone about entering a state is through slowing down. So I don't know if that's what you mean by release first, but I'm curious to hear from you or from others ways people have found to get open to this multiplicity, to be responsive to the environment, to be responsive to all, with all. And I'm curious if people have found high activation, high movement versus, for myself, slowness being more like stillness.
Yeah, you
Not
know, I don't,
necessarily the
I,
stillness. So I'm curious to hear other routes besides the stillness route.
I've always been a fast dancer until I got old. So I would start out of all of that really by moving faster. By engaging with physics, by finding the felt physics in all parts of my body. And that meant I had to toss myself around a lot.
That's so interesting, Nita, because I wouldn't have guessed you'd say that. And this just comes from years of practice with you longer ago, I suppose. But I always remember initiating with slow, continuous action. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I would do that when I was working with a lot of people. But if
okay.
you ever saw me warm up for performance, which you did, I don't practice continuous action as
Mhm.
my mode of getting prepped.
Maybe it's more in ensemble. Do you find that
In
that is where?
ensemble, I would do it. I would do the continuous action. The continuous action dance is really to be able to train um, that relationship between control and abandon,
Mhm.
and for strength. It's a strength building. Um, I think of it as an exercise rather than a warm up. Though it does work as a warm up, but it is one of being able to feel weight fall to the underside.
When you said, I think what maybe I was engaging with was how to find ground together.
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see that is and maybe this speaks to the gentleman's question there. I don't remember your name, sorry. But how it is that given that gravity is the one unifying force, uh, it is where our attention can all go simultaneously. I feel that that is the release down offers that.
The thing I remember from that, from
Mhm.
those labbing days in Santa Cruz song was when getting everyone together was to ask everyone to experience your partner's presence, experience your partner experiencing your presence. When does your partner know you're present? Know where you know, um, or moving at the speed of your partner's awareness? It became that. Move at the speed of your partner's attention, really, not awareness. It became that stuff. But when we started to shift minds so that we became, we not only were aware of one another's presence in the space, but of our awareness of one another's presence, then we started to hook up in a really wonderful way. And that was an attentional practice, more than a specifically physical one.
I guess in contrast to that, with groups, I've also seen people like start walking, but like now everybody run or run through or like magnesium run at each other. And that also kind of snapped people into allowing their body to react, to respond by having those near misses and just kind of cutting straight to have near misses, and that'll activate this part of existence, this mode of being.
Yeah, the problem is people get hard, and I think what song is speaking to is a practice we have of staying open and relaxed, um, uh, without getting into that hard body, that defensive form. Because the multiple body is not a hard body; it's a released body. It's when the body organizes that it becomes hard. Or it's, I mean, we need the body to be able to organize. Absolutely. Otherwise we can do nothing. So it sounds as though we're working against that. No, but I'm emphasizing the wilderness, the multiplicity, the many that we are, this engaged form that we are, because when we start to understand selfhood on multiple scales, there's always somewhere to go. And I think that's the answer to what I was going to say to you, Song, about what do you do when you feel yourself, when the I becomes so loud in performance or otherwise. It is recognizing that that I is only existing on one of many scales. And it's a practice to learn to shift scales. Scales of identity. So identifying, it's not just recognizing, it's not being aware of the world, it is identity. I am. Identity is I am.
I have a question. So I guess maybe 15 years ago, I did a workshop with Nancy, and one of the pieces that really stuck with me was the room tilt score, the walk, stand, sit, lie down, being the vocabulary for how we're moving in space together. And I've used that score quite a bit to bring in kind of wake up compositional awareness, this recognition that like I am part of a live evolving composition, co-creating it, and in responsive relationship to everything else that's moving in the room. And I feel like it that practice for me, and also with students, like I see it take us to, like, it starts with like, I'm actively making choices in response to what you just did. But it kind of takes us to that choiceless responsive place where our perception widens and we are part of this moving, evolving landscape.
So
and
somebody else's body can actually start to move you.
Right, exactly. And so it's like, it's faster than conscious thought and so I'm curious about what you just said in relationship to that, about the identification piece, because I haven't quite taken it there.
Well,
it's more like I am part of the whole, but not I am you. Like it hasn't
exactly.
gone, but
Exactly.
I'm curious about it.
The second you change your identity to identify as the space, becoming that size, your time practices will change. Your ability to move with greater immediacy. I mean, your body, the whole, you are this larger thing. So now I'm struggling with language because language isn't letting me say it the way I need to say it. You are this size, the size of the room. And the room that is your body, your specific recognizable skin sac, that aspect of the room moves with much greater time awareness. I mean, you will be moving before you know you're moving, because you're not thinking as a single being.
Yeah. I feel that in that practice, and I love this as connecting this to your framing and being like, oh yeah, that is what's happening. It's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And letting oneself be not just the known, but also the unknown.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the way you are articulating all of this body wisdom with the words. It's very precious. And my question is more about, I wrote it in the chat, and
I'm
it's
sorry.
about, it's okay.
I'm very bad at looking at chats, guys.
No,
I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry. So it's about how do I remind this in the daily life? Because I know the state that you're talking about, that you're describing. I feel like I live it when I step into the dance floor. And there's always this funny moment when I don't dance contact for a while, and then I go to the gym and I go like, I don't know if I still know how to do this thing.
Yeah.
And then it just takes a moment, and I step into the dance floor, and I'm in this, in a way, it's a flow state where I am the dance. But then when I come into the daily life, I feel somewhat constrained and tight and like small. And I wonder if you manage to apply that more into your daily life, making decisions about where to go and what to do, and more the
Yeah,
yeah
I'm personally, I'm very committed to improvisation, and I'm pretty, I see all these articles that say, to be successful, you have to organize and be very
Mhm,
organized. And I'm not.
mhm,
I mean, I am, but my organization shows up as flow. And
mhm.
actually the pandemic, when I was stuck at home for 2.5 years, I taught a workshop called Relational Intelligence at Home. And in that, I started to practice letting the intelligence of the space itself move me. So that I was in a kind of dance with the space of my my apartment and the beings in my apartment. And instead of, I turned everything into a being.
And do you have a specific practices that you do in yourself on a daily basis that help you to be in this improvisational state?
I think there's not a specific thing that I do. I think it has become a great deal, it has almost become who I am, that
Like a nature.
I have practiced it for so long. You know,
That gives me hope.
but to feel boundless, I think that's an incredibly important practice. To remind yourself that you're boundless. You're a boundless being, and to seek how that could possibly be so. How could it be so that that the wilderness is right here at hand, and that is who I am? I am that.
I guess the question I'm trying to get into that point is, when I am not experiencing myself as that, and I am experiencing myself as a tight space, how to
Oh,
open
change scale.
right there.
Change scale.
Uh-huh.
Get experience yourself on a cellular level. And invite all of those cells to start to speak to you. Allow those cells to make choices for you. So as you move, you recognize that you can be moved by something going on in your hand or the back of your shoulder. You have invited the very small, the many, many very small that you also are. And you bring the ear. The ear is there. They have access to all of you. Or get very large. Become the size of the space you are present to. And again, support peripheral intelligence. Let yourself be moved by something other than your brain. And part of that practice is recognizing when it happens, because it's happening to you all the time. You just aren't recognizing it. You're not giving it power. You're not going, oh, that actually wasn't my brain doing that, That was the wilderness showing up. And giving greater authority to your world. It's just, it's stopping the demand that you be the authority. Just stop that demand. When I like to think of contact improvisation as being co-created. And in my own experience, part of the creation of contact improvisation has come from what people don't know, not from what they do know, from what bodies haven't gotten to yet, not what bodies are capable of. So the absence of something is as powerful as the presence of something in moving you. That's another conversation. We won't go there because that's maybe a little too problematic. Anyway, everyone, I want to bring this to a close. I want to thank you all for showing up. I'm sorry that I didn't read all of these wonderful comments. I will read them, but I have enjoyed my time with you. Thank you so much. Look forward to the next one. I think we do one in October too. So if you can come to October's, if you have an idea of something you would really like Breaking Bread to be discussing, bring it to me. I would love to hear about it. Great. Okay.